Good morning, everyone. Muy buenos días a todos. There are many things in this gospel. It's dramatic, and it's positioned exactly as the last great sign that Jesus performs before he enters into his passion, and that is one of the reasons it is read on this Sunday. Este evangelio tiene muchos detalles y tiene muchos puntos y preguntas, como la semana pasada, cuando se curó el hombre nacido ciego. Pero es importante para nosotros en estos pocos minutos, pues, enfocarnos en lo principal. I encourage everyone, of course, to read this gospel during the course of the week and look at the detail and look at some of the way the drama unfolds and what Jesus is showing us, no? So I would like to focus simply on three things, tres cosas solamente. Cómo Jesús recibe a las dos hermanas, primero Marta y luego María, y cómo Jesús se dirige al muerto. So I'd like to look just briefly at how Jesus responds to Martha, who comes to see him, one of the sisters, and then to Mary, the other sister, who comes also out to him, and then how Jesus addresses himself to Lazarus, who is in the tomb, but more than in the tomb, he is in the land of the dead, from which we are cut off. Bueno, porque pienso que esta manera de entrar en el Evangelio nos ayuda a entender los puntos alrededor. No, this would help us, I think, if we look at these three things, what's going on all around it. Primero, Marta. First, Martha. Martha goes out and runs to see Jesus because he's coming. Lazarus has already been dead for 4 days, and they were hoping he would come earlier. ¿No? Es que anticipaban y querían y esperaban que el Señor iba a llegar antes, so that he could have in some way maybe done what he'd done to so many other people, touched him and healed him from his fever or whatever it was that was afflicting him. Era la esperanza de esta familia íntimos amigos de Jesús. They had hoped that he would come and do what he had done for so many others, but in the mystery of Jesus' purpose, he did not. And so she runs to him, and even though her brother has already died, she goes, and she's not shy about telling him what she thinks. Lord, if you had been here, Señor, si hubieras estado aquí, mi hermano no habría muerto. My brother would not have died. I want you to remember that phrase because Mary, a little bit later, will say exactly the same thing. With Martha, Jesus asks for a very specific kind of faith, ¿no? Con Marta es algo distinto, ¿no? Porque le pide a ella una expresión, una profesión de una fe muy particular. What he tells her is, your brother will rise, tu hermano va a resucitar. Sí, lo creo, al fin de los tiempos. Yes, I believe that at the end of time. No. Yo soy la resurrección. I am the resurrection. You see, he says this to her. It's the only place in the gospel where this phrase is used. Yo soy la resurrección y la vida. ¿Crees esto? It's a very powerful response to her. I am the resurrection and the life. Do you believe this? She was a follower of Jesus. She knew what Jesus had done. Jesus had eaten in their home. She knew that Jesus had loved her brother just like he loved Martha and Mary. And she says, and you can almost see Jesus is reaching into her soul and asking for an act of faith. Es que el Señor extiende, ¿no?, con su palabra al alma de Marta para pedir esta profesión de fe. And she says, yes, Lord, I believe. Even now, that God will do whatever you ask him. Even now means, ya después de 4 días en la tumba, hasta la fecha yo creo que Dios Responde si tú le pides algo. It's very specific. This is also for us. In the death is the great mystery, ¿no? La muerte es el gran misterio. Y delante de la muerte, que es algo espantoso, es algo misterioso y no entendemos y eso, lo primero que hace Jesús es pedir fe en su persona como la resurrección. Do you believe I am the resurrection? This is the first thing he asks for. And he asks it of Martha, but he asks it of us all. In the mystery of death, in the face of it all, the great question of human life, the first thing, do you believe this? Martha's profession of faith is at the heart of the faith of the church, ¿no? Es que en este momento Marta expresa la fe de los creyentes, de la iglesia, de los bautizados. Creemos en el Cristo que resucita a los muertos, cuerpo y alma. Yes, Lord, I believe this. This is what we say in the creed. This is what we profess as Catholics, that he is the resurrection and he can, at his voice, make death fall back. It is un momento importante. This is why this moment is important in the whole unfolding of the story. It establishes the very particular purpose of Jesus. I am the resurrection. That is, the life comes from me. And I will show you. Y te voy a mostrar que la vida viene de mí. Martha then runs back to her sister who's in the house. Marta y regresa a la casa para decirle a María, que está en la casa llorando, que es muy entendible. She was crying. We understand that. That's us. Before the mystery of death, we don't understand it, and we can't stop it. And she tells him the master is looking for you. And so she runs out too, ¿no? Es que hay algo en esto, ¿no? Que Jesús viene acercándose. Jesus is coming closer to us. And Martha goes to meet him, and she gets her sister, you go, he's looking for you. El maestro quiere platicar contigo. So she runs. She falls at his feet. They're still outside the house. They're still a ways off. Apparently Lazarus lived in a pretty big place. And she says exactly what her sister had said. La misma frase que usaba Marta, usa María. Señor, si hubieras estado aquí, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. Mi hermano no habría muerto. It's different here. It's a different moment. He doesn't respond to her the way he responded to Martha, and that's because Martha is the sister. They're not exactly alike. They're not twins. They don't think, they have different, they're different. No, Jesus deals with us as we are. She's crying. And the gospel doesn't tell us that at that moment he said anything. Same question, same if you had been here. And then the gospel tells us Jesus was profoundly moved, profundamente conmovido el Señor, y empezó a llorar. Él empezó a llorar. He began to cry. It's the only time we know in the gospel when Jesus is said Jesus wept. He wept, even though he knew he was going to raise him, even though he knew he is the resurrection and the life, even though he was certain of his power to bring him back. He wept. El Señor sabía muy bien que él tenía como la resurrección el poder de resucitar este muerto. Pero aún así se le salieron las lágrimas. We should note this. Hay que notar esto, ¿no? Porque Dios se hizo carne, ¿no? Dios es uno de nosotros, pero no deja de ser Dios. God becomes flesh in Christ Jesus, but he doesn't cease to be God. But he's truly one of us, pero realmente es uno de nosotros. Y como uno de nosotros sabe cómo llorar, he knows how to weep, because that's the human thing. Es que el Señor no tiene corazón de piedra. Las lágrimas de Jesús en este momento son las lágrimas de Dios mirando a todo un mundo atado por la muerte. These tears of Christ are the tears of God in the flesh of Christ in facing a world that is bound by death. And we can truly say, if death moves us to tears as it does, so God has allowed himself to show us his own tears. God is not indifferent to us. He knows. He knows. That's why it's not important for Jesus to say anything to her. En este momento no es tan importante que diga el Señor algo a María. Lo importante es que se une a sus lágrimas. Porque son las lágrimas de Dios delante del misterio de la muerte. And then he does say, but he says to the group around them, where have you laid him? ¿Dónde pusieron el cuerpo? And that's when he's weeping. Y la gente dice, se comenta, no, mira, lo amaba mucho, no, lo quería mucho. ¿Y por qué no lo salvó? ¿Por qué no llegó a tiempo? No, they're still asking this question. The crowd says, see how much he loved him. Couldn't he have come earlier and saved him? Maybe brought him back to, health or something, touched him? This is not what this is about. Jesus does not come just to kind of delay death. This is opening up the mystery of the resurrection. Jesús no llega así principalmente para prevenir la muerte en este mundo. Viene para superar la muerte. No, he comes to overcome death, which is a different thing. For he will not even avoid his own death. So they're still asking, bueno, pues es que la gente dice, ¿y por qué no le salvó a el pobre muerto? Eran amigos. That's why he says, where have you laid him? And he goes, and he gives glory to the Father. No, el Señor siempre, cuando llega al sepulcro, no, el Señor hace lo que siempre hace, es darle gracias a Dios Padre. He gives thanks to God the Father. And then he directs himself to Lazarus. Se junta al sepulcro junto con Marta, la que hizo su profesión de fe. He goes close to the tomb, together with Martha, who made her profession of faith, our profession of faith, and together with Mary, who was weeping. And we go because we too are weeping before the mystery of death. ¿No? Se arrima al sepulcro, ¿no? Junto con Marta y con su fe en la resurrección. Nosotros. Junto con María y con sus lágrimas, que también somos nosotros. We are a people who have faith in the resurrection because they represent us. We are a people who have faith in the resurrection and who weep before death. Faith does not take away the sorrow. La fe no quita el dolor. Pero la fe nos abre a la maravilla del poder de Dios. But the faith opens us to the power of God. So together, the faith of Martha and the tears of Mary, and Jesus directs himself to Lazarus. The body of Lazarus is in the tomb. No, el cuerpo de Lázaro está en la tumba. Pero realmente, Lázaro está entre los muertos. Lazarus is amongst the dead. That is, in the faith of Israel at that time, and as we certainly know, the soul, once it leaves the body, goes somewhere. Entonces el Señor se dirige al muerto. Ahí está el cuerpo, pero el muerto está en los terrenos de los muertos. Salte de aquí, de ahí. Come out from there. There, ¿no? Come out from there. ¿Qué significa eso? Vente para acá. La tierra de los vivos. Come to the place of the living. And Lazarus comes out, and he is bound. No, es que está atado Lázaro. Sale el cuerpo con el alma, no porque está vivo. He's alive, as he had been before. It's important to note this. Está vivo como había estado antes, cuerpo y alma. No más que está atado, entonces take the binds off of him and unfree him. You see, this is what Jesus, when he opens up the mystery of life, he unties us. No, por esto viene. This is what he comes for, to untie us from death that holds us bound. This is what he does. And they untie him. He's doing this. What he's showing us, because this is a great sign. Recall, it's important. Hay que buscar, por ejemplo, en el mismo Evangelio de San Juan, capítulo 5, 25. Jesus himself says in John 5:25, "And the dead shall hear the voice of the Son of God, and they will live." En 5:25 del mismo Evangelio, los muertos oirán la voz del Hijo de Dios y vivirán. This is exactly what's happening. Because what he's showing us is that the voice of the Son of God enters into the place of the dead and they come forth. Que la voz del Hijo de Dios se oye entre los muertos, no nomás aquí en el mundo, entre los muertos. Y cuando dice el Hijo de Dios, salte de ahí, they come out. This is what he's showing us. El poder del Hijo de Dios, con su voz, penetra hasta la muerte. And death will fall back. Cede paso la muerte cuando oye la voz del Hijo de Dios. Death falls back when he speaks into the land of the dead. And this is a sign, esta es la seña. Jesús, Hijo de Dios, tiene poder sobre la muerte. Y aun que la muerte ya había tomado preso a este hombre, death had already kind of captured this man. It has to let go because he speaks. This is the sign of who Jesus is and what he can do, but it's not yet complete. And this is where it leaves us. No, es la seña, anticipa pero no completa. It anticipates but it doesn't complete the showing to us. Porque Lázaro no resucita glorificado. Lazarus does not rise from the dead glorified, as Jesus will rise. This is to show us he has power into the world of the dead. But it's to prepare us for what he will ultimately show us 2 weeks from now, in his own resurrection. Cristo, cuando él resucita glorificado. It's not just an extension of more days in this world. When Jesus rises, he opens up the world of everlasting life. No, Lázaro vive, pero en este mundo, y va a morir. Pero en Cristo se abre la puerta a la resurrección y la glorificación hasta del cuerpo. You see, this is why this is a sign. It anticipates, but it does not complete. The completion that Jesus will show us today is just about know that I have authority over death. But when I rise, I will show you more. En cierto sentido, todo esto tiene que ver con Jesús diciendo a nosotros, sepan que yo tengo autoridad sobre la muerte. Pero aún todavía no ven, ¿no? Porque cuando resucitó yo, verán la gloria de Dios en mi propio cuerpo. This is why this gospel I encourage us. Hay que leer este evangelio durante esta semana, anticipando Domingo de Ramos, la semana que entra, to help us prepare for Palm Sunday. This word of Jesus, this preparing us for the greater mystery even of his own death and resurrection. May the Lord open our hearts to have the faith of Martha and the tears of Mary to prepare us for the coming days. Que el Señor nos nos preste no la fe de Marta y las lágrimas de María para prepararnos a realmente entrar en los grandes misterios del Señor crucificado y resucitado. Amén.